So I'm going to talk about 3 specific value-based care models. I've been touching on them throughout, but we'll give you a little bit of overview to help set up the impact of COVID on these. Accountable care organizations, we've already been over. It's a population health play, benchmark, and then you have to get into the shared savings potential. So with the MSSP, Medicare Shared Savings Program, you go through these levels. A to B is no risk. You move from A to B. If, for those not familiar with the alphabet, you move from A to B to C to D, but each has an increasing amount of risk that you take with a corresponding increase in rewards. So math is not my strength, but I'm going to walk you through basic level C to give you a quick understanding. First dollar savings at a rate of up to 50%. So let's say $100 million benchmark, you save $10 million, 50% of which is $5 million. The cap on your savings is 10%, $10 million, so you're safe, you get to keep your $5 million. The downside, first dollar losses at a rate of 30%, so you lose $10 million. You're going to have to pay 30%, but not under level C because there's 2 caps. If the entire ACO is comprised of 100 primary care physicians whose total cost is $10 million, their revenue, participant revenue is $10 million, 2% of that is only $200,000. So that's going to be subject to a $200,000 cap. 3% of updated benchmark would be $3 million, so we'll revert back to this cap of $200,000. That's the most you're going to have to pay under basic level C in that scenario. BPCI we touched on. A couple of things that we want to point out. 20% upside and downside on day one. There are no per member per month payments. You're taking risk immediately. And we touched on a lot of other these components of the program, but I think the biggest criticism of the program is that 20% downside right off the bat, and there's no safe zone. If you recall talking about that, if you don't get below the target price, you owe a penalty. It's not based on the benchmark, and there's no per member per month payments to help invest in the infrastructure. This is just another great data slide. This is looking at all the episodes that orthopedic practice applied for to start to look at total cost for the practice as a whole. Just another example of how cool, the cool things that you can do with data. OCM is a program where we spend a lot of time. The model is 10 performance periods comprising 5 years, so 6 months each. It is a fee-for-service system, just like a lot of these other programs, and then there's reconciliations. There are per member per month payments. They're known as MIOS in this program. The reporting in this, the data is exceptional, but the reporting does lag. In the bundle payment program, the reporting is monthly. In this program, it is quarterly. So it's not as good. And then the reconciliation doesn't occur for almost 18 months, which is problematic. So if you're deciding whether to take action based on your results, you're dealing in data that is pretty stale. And that's important because at the beginning of this year, January 1st, was performance period 8. It was the first time that groups had to either stay in the program or leave. They could stay in under one-sided, which means there's no risk whatsoever, only if they had already achieved savings in performance period 1, 2, 3, or 4, even though they've already been through 7 performance periods. Two-sided was the original two-sided that nobody liked, so CMS came up with an alternative two-sided, which is a lot more approachable, and a lot of practices did end up going alternative two-sided. 16% upside, 8% downside risk. Of course, prudent practices bought stop-loss insurance to make sure that they didn't have to take the entire downside risk, and the better you can demonstrate your performance and adherence to certain interventions necessary in the program, obviously the lower the cost becomes. Another just data slide to show you, this is so cool, the CMS actually provided this to all the groups. It allowed the groups to see what their maximum upside and downside was under the programs, and it went through some really key metrics. CMS has been, I think, a great partner in a lot of these programs, even though some of the programs, I think, deserve some tweaks. I put this slide up because no slide has ever taken me longer to put together, but the idea here is this safe zone number 1, right? So you can You can have the safe zone where you have to get below the target price to make money, but if you're below, if you're above the target price but below the benchmark, you don't have to pay anything. I also put this up because one-sided versus two-sided is significant. It's about a 1.5% difference. So if your benchmark is $100 million, let's say, and you only have to beat that by 2.5%, as opposed to 4%, that's the easiest money to get. So it could be the difference of a significant amount of money to take that downside risk if it makes sense.